Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Crime and Punishment story. This week I am covering the story of Peter Toner and the murder of Catherine Toner, which took place in Gateshead in 1887. I hope you'll find the story interesting. The past life of one of those involved in this week's case was again almost impossible to find, so sadly their backstory will be quite basic. Peter Toner was said to be around 36 years old at the time the crime was committed, so would have been born in around 1851. Peter worked as a bricklayer and lived with his wife Catherine and their children in Heworth in Gateshead. He was not described by anyone as being a heavy drinker, however it was quite clear that he did enjoy a drink on a regular basis. Catherine Toner, the victim, was born Catherine Diamond in around 1857 in Gateshead to parents Patrick and Bridget, and she was one of at least 5 children. Her father had died and her mother had remarried. She herself had married Peter Toner and the couple had at least 4 children together. Catherine, it seems, was known to be a heavy drinker, and this caused many arguments with her husband, and Catherine does not appear to have had a job. Before we go any further, can I just say, if you do find this video interesting, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here or haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel to help support the content we create. It really is very much appreciated. And it is completely free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, but it really does help to support the channel. And I would just like to add, as I always do, that I do record these stories live, so I do sometimes make mistakes, which I always try to rectify. So I hope this does not spoil your enjoyment of the video. On the afternoon of October the 9th, 1887, Catherine had been attending the christening of one of her brother's children. On her return home, her husband Peter asked her for some money so that he could go and celebrate the christening himself. Catherine refused to give him any, and this led to the couple arguing. Although it's not entirely clear what happened, it seems that Peter lost his temper during the fight and struck Catherine a heavy blow on the head with a poker. Catherine, bleeding quite badly, ran to the home of her brother and was later taken into her sister's house where she was put to bed. Sadly, Catherine took a turn for the worse and died just a few hours after the attack. The police and a doctor were sent for. Sergeant Tiller went to the home of the Toners on the 10th of October and, acting on information received, he arrested Peter on a charge of causing the death of his wife Catherine. Peter replied saying, "We had an argument yesterday, but I did not touch her." The inquest was held at the Beeswing Hotel in Felon before Coroner Maynard. Patrick Diamond said he had identified the body as being that of his sister Catherine. He said Catherine lived with her husband Peter in Summer Street in Felon. He said Catherine had died at the home of his sister, Bridget Gartland. Patrick said Catherine had come to his house on October the 9th at around 5 p.m. She had a bruise on her face and he had asked her what was wrong. He did not state what Catherine had said in answer to this question. Catherine was taken into his sister Bridget's house and she was put to bed. He said a short time later her husband Peter came to his house asking to see Catherine. He said he wanted some money so that he could go and buy some whiskey. He said Bridget would not give him the key to go into the house. Patrick said Bridget spoke to Peter, telling him that he had finished his wife this time, and he said Peter replied saying, "I hope she never gets up again until she is carried out." Patrick said he had gone out after this and did not return to his home until around 8 p.m. He then went into Bridget's house to see Catherine. It was then that he found Catherine had died. He said Peter was standing at her bedside and he said to him, "Peter, you have got your wish." He said he did not reply and he left the house a few moments later. When asked, Patrick said he thought that Peter had been drinking, but he did not appear to him to be drunk. He said he believed that Catherine had been sober. She had drunk a little in the afternoon at the christening, but very little. Mary Cross of Gateshead said she lived opposite the Toners in Summer Street. She said on the afternoon of the 9th, Catherine had come to her house. She was bleeding from a wound on her head. Mary said she did not ask how this had happened and Catherine did not tell her. She simply washed the blood from her face and then returned to her own home. Mary said she saw Peter leave the house before Catherine went home. When asked, she said she believed that both Catherine and Peter were sober when she had seen them. Annie Diamond of Gateshead said she was the wife of Patrick. She said she had been present when Catherine came into the house on the 9th. She was complaining of a sore head. Annie said she helped to take her into the home of Bridget Gartland. Annie said she noticed a cut on the top of Catherine's head, which was bleeding, but nothing was done to this wound, and she helped to put Catherine to bed. Later that evening, Annie said she spoke to Peter and told him Catherine's head was cut, and he said, "I wondered what caused that." Annie said she told him that she did not know. Bridget Gartland of Gateshead said Catherine was her sister and she'd been present in her brother's house when Catherine came in complaining of a sore head. She said they did not put her to bed straight away as she had a small glass of whiskey and danced for a few minutes with another of her sisters. Bridget said Catherine became unwell after this and they assumed it had been the whiskey and the dancing that had made her sick. She said it was after this that the cut to her head was discovered. Michael Gartland of Gateshead also spoke of Catherine dancing, but he said she did not dance for long. He said he returned to his own home a while after the women had put Catherine to bed, and when he went home, Peter Toner was with him. He said as soon as he went inside, he knew something was wrong with Catherine, as her lips looked blue. He said Peter went to the bedside first and said his wife was dead. Michael said he agreed with Peter. Peter then accused him of smothering his wife, and Michael said he told him to be careful of saying such untrue things. Michael said shortly after this, Patrick Diamond came into the house where Catherine was lying in bed and was told his sister had died. He said Peter left the house after that. Michael said he saw Peter again sometime between 2 and 3 a.m, and Peter asked him what people were saying about Catherine. Michael said he told him he did not know, but she had had a cut on her head, and Peter had replied saying, "How has that been done?" Michael said he told him he did not know. The coroner then spoke to the jury, telling them that two of the most important witnesses were the Toners' children. However, it was not clear if both would be able to give evidence, as one was only 7 years old. They would see how the children behaved when asked questions before the jury. Francis Toner said he was 9 years old and lived with his parents at Gateshead. He said on the afternoon of the 9th he was outside playing marbles with his younger brother Peter when he heard his parents arguing. He said he went inside and saw his father strike his mother with his fist, and she fell backwards and hit her head on the corner of the chest of drawers. He said his mother ran out of the house to the lady over the road. When asked, he said he saw his father strike his mother several times. Her face was bleeding, but he did not see him strike her with anything other than his fist. Peter Toner was to give evidence next. However, his school teacher was called, and he stated that he did not believe that Peter, who was only 7, as said before, would understand the oath of the court. The jury then decided that his evidence would not be taken. Sergeant Tiller of Felon said in the early hours of the 10th he was called to the home of Peter Toner. He said he saw Catherine here as she had been carried back to her own home. She was already dead and had been so for some time. Acting on information received, he said he had arrested Peter on a charge of causing the death of his wife. He said Peter made the following statement. "We had a row yesterday at around 2 p.m, but I did not touch her. Many times in the past I have struck her, but not this time. For years she has spent all the money she could get on drink, and she was drunk the day before she died and fell down many times." He did not say anything else. Sergeant Tiller said he had examined the house and found a poker near to the kitchen fire, which was covered in blood. He had taken this to the police station. Dr. Kelly did not state if he had seen Catherine on the day of her death. However, he stated that he had performed the post-mortem. He said that Catherine had scratches on her face and neck and her arms were bruised. She also had a cut to her head which reached down to the bone. He said this cut had resulted in a fracture to the skull, and blood in the brain caused by the fracture was, in his professional opinion, the cause of death. When asked, he said the injury he described could not have been caused by a fall against a chest of drawers. It had been caused by a blunt instrument used with great force, and he felt that the poker produced to the jury could have easily caused such a wound. I did not find any details of the coroner summing up. However, the jury, who retired for a very short time, returned a verdict of guilty of manslaughter against Peter Toner, and he was committed for trial. Prior to the trial, Peter appeared at a magistrate's hearing at Gateshead Police Court, where he was able to question many of the witnesses, and some further evidence was given. Francis Toner added to his statement from the inquest by stating that when his father had come home on the 9th, his dinner was not ready for him, and he had been unhappy about this. He had asked his mother if she was drinking again after she had promised she would not drink ever again. He said he had seen his mother drink between 12:30 and 2 that day, but he did not think that she was drunk. Annie Diamond of Gateshead repeated her statement that her husband had spoken of at the inquest, stating that Peter had said he hoped his wife would not rise again until she was carried out in a box. Peter Toner then asked her if she would swear to this, and she said that she would. He then asked if she would swear that Catherine had been sober on the 9th, and again she said she would. He then asked if she had not told him to bring her to their house to put her to bed because she was drunk, and Annie said she had not. Again he asked her if she would swear to this, and she said she would. He then sank back into his seat, stating, "She will swear to anything. I will not ask her anything more." Mary Colleen of Felon said on the night of Catherine's death, Peter Toner had come to her house in an agitated state. She said he told her, "They have killed Catherine. She is gone this time without my hand." Mary said she replied saying, "Well, Peter, you know that best yourself." He replied saying, "They have smothered her. I did not touch her." Mary said she told him he must not say such things, as many times he had hit her and he knew it. She said he got very angry at this and said he would take her to court for slander. She then told him to get out of her house and he left. Mary said she then went to Catherine's home. She saw blood on the floor near the bed, but she did not see any anywhere else. She said she was there when Catherine's body was carried in. When asked, she stated that Peter had been agitated and excited when he had come to her house, but she did not think that he was drunk. The end result of the court hearing was a simple official charge of manslaughter against Peter Toner. I did not find any evidence of a funeral for Catherine Toner. However, I am aware that one did take place, and it is possible that her family were able to pay for her burial. She is buried in Heworth churchyard. However, I did not find any evidence of a headstone for Catherine anywhere in the churchyard. The trial took place in Durham in November of 1887 before Mr. Justice Coleridge. Peter pleaded not guilty to the charge. As is often the case, the evidence at the trial is almost identical to that given at the inquest, so I will only include any new information, and in this case there was very little new evidence heard. The defence spoke to the jury, stating that there was no clear evidence against Peter Toner. The doctor had spoken of how Catherine had an injury to her head, and as they had heard, she was often drunk and often fell. It was quite possible, he said, that in her drunken state she had fallen and hit her head, and this had caused the injury, especially if she had fallen near the chimney or the bed head or some other object. He suggested that Peter was not responsible for her death. I do not find any details of the prosecution summing up, but I think we can be sure that he would have stated that the doctor had made it clear that Catherine's injuries could not have been caused by a fall. He would no doubt have also made comment on the statement made by Peter on the night she died, wishing her dead. I did not find any details of the judge summing up. However, the jury, who retired for a short time, returned a verdict of guilty of manslaughter. The judge then spoke to Peter, telling him it was quite possible that in the past he may have had provocation from his wife, as it was clear that she was someone who was prone to drinking to excess. However, on this occasion, it seems that his wife was not drunk at all. He added that husbands who felt they could treat their wives as they wished and strike them or knock them about would find themselves before the wrong judge when they found themselves before him, and for this dreadful case he would sentence Peter to 10 years penal servitude. I do not find any details of Peter after this date, so I do not know which prison he was sent to serve out his sentence, and I do not know when he was released. As for his children, by 1891 all four could be found living with Catherine's mother and stepfather in Heworth, and it seems unlikely that they would ever have returned to living with their father, even if he had been released in less than the 10 years he had been sentenced to. And I have to admit to being slightly curious to know if any of his children ever spoke to him again after the death of their mother. This was another very sad case, and it seems clear to me that Catherine did have a problem with drinking. And although this did seem to anger her husband, it seems that Peter was not much better than his wife, as he also seemed to like to drink quite a lot. In this case, it's hard to know if drink was the cause of the initial argument, as although Peter suggested Catherine was drunk, every other witness said she was not. And it was also said that Peter did not seem to be drunk either. But if I am honest, I am inclined to think that neither of them were entirely sober that day. And it's still not clear what actually happened that day, as the only witness who saw anything at all was Francis, and he was sure that his father did not strike his mother with the poker. However, this may have happened before he came inside or after he had gone out again. In my opinion, it seems that the argument went too far. Peter lost his temper and struck out at his wife with the poker in a moment of blind rage. Were the jury correct to find him guilty of manslaughter? Well, yes, I think they were. Although it has to be said, if he really did say he wished his wife to die, then it feels that manslaughter was not quite enough. But this statement was possibly seen as hearsay and not enough to prove a case of willful murder. Was the judge correct to send him to prison for 10 years? Well, again, yes, I think he was. Although I do believe he could have still been sent to prison for life when found guilty of manslaughter. Of course, it is very likely that he would have been released well before his 10 years was up. But I do think that 10 years was quite a good result for this case. But what do you think? Do you think there is any possibility that Catherine had caused her own injuries by falling when she was drunk? Or do you think the doctor was correct and her injuries were so bad that they could have only been caused by a fierce blow to the head from the poker? Do you think Catherine was drunk that day and her relatives lied about this because they felt Peter should be punished for his ill use of their sister in the past? Or do you think she really was sober that day? Do you think the jury were correct to find Peter guilty of manslaughter, or do you think it should have been murder? And do you think 10 years in prison was enough for the crime he may have committed, or should he have been sent to prison for life? Do please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I just want to add a little side note here. I recently found an old poker at my dad's house. You've seen me use a photo of it in some of my recent videos. And although it's old and rusty, as you can see, it is also still very heavy and no doubt a lethal weapon in the wrong hands. Holding this poker really brought it home to me how bad it must have been for those who were attacked by someone using a poker. I can't even begin to imagine how they must have felt, or why anyone thought it was okay to attack someone with a poker in this way. Anyway, I do hope you have found this very sad and tragic story interesting, and I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do look forward to seeing you all again next week.